Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading, and you are tuned in, and thank you for doing so, to our podcast, The Secret War on Cash, where we take an in-depth look at some of the things taking place in our economy around us. I have my co-host with me, Chris Agelastos, here today. And Chris, today we are going to talk about gold. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right. That's kind of what we do here, right?
Well, we do, and we cover a lot of topics, but these are actually some pretty bold and interesting gold predictions that we have today. And the bottom line is that they're not new. I think
Hmm.
that maybe it's a little bit of an eye catcher for some, in so much as that gold went over 5 Gs, pulled back a little bit. Now it's starting to rally back up again. And this first article here from King World News, where Nomi Prins talks about how gold price will hit $7,000 to $9,000 an ounce. So for
Yeah.
those sitting on the sidelines, if you're wondering from an investment standpoint, is it a good time to get in? Well, if even if she's wrong by a little bit, or even a lot, it's probably a good time to get in. And as I read through this, Chris, what's interesting is she kind of hits on the points that have all been driving the price of gold for the
Hmm.
last several years. How you have central banks buying, you have all this unrest taking place throughout the world. Yes, we had a little bit of a maybe a moment of pause for some people or investors in terms of what they were doing, or maybe trying to uh, sell off some metals in order to offset some other areas of their portfolio
Hmm.
when the war hit. But at the end of the day, again, that cyclone of activity that has been driving the metals prices, that continues, and that's what she's really kind of driving home here, is that this is just kind of the almost becoming the status quo path that the metals markets have been on.
Yeah, you're right, and you're right to say, this isn't the first time we've heard these numbers, right? A lot of people have been, a lot of analysts have been talking about it over the last 6 months or so. What to expect? What's unique about this is Nomi herself. She's very accomplished. Was a managing director at Goldman Sachs. Has worked with Bear Stearns in London and also Chase Manhattan. She's been keynote speaker to the IMF, the World Bank, and the Federal Reserve. Right, so this isn't just somebody on the internet who has an opinion about precious metals and what's going on in the world. I mean, this is somebody that's very accomplished, and important people listen to her to get her take on what's going on. So, I think that's one of the key things I picked up on here is. Her credibility is just off the charts, and she is saying that she expects us to see $6,000 gold before the end of the year, which gives us 6 7 months or so to hit that number, which seems pretty realistic where we sit now in the 45 to 5,000 range. And then she's saying 7,000 to 9,000 per ounce in the next couple of years, and the key drivers are continued central bank buying. That's been a big push. And then also rising inflation and just geopolitical tensions. She talks about a lot of the inflation that we're seeing, or kind of delayed inflation that we're going to be seeing from everything going on right now with Iran. And she also expects some strong moves in silver as well. So it's not just gold, even though that kind of takes the headline here. But yeah, we've got a credible person that people listen to, echoing the statements of a lot of other credible analysts over the year. So at this point, it's a lot harder to find anybody with credibility that says gold prices are going to tank. that
Sure.
I haven't been able to find.
Yeah. Well, and again, it speaks to the fact that you have, again, central banks, institutions, investors, not to mention even some of the investment or industrial uses of the metals. There's so much buying going on in the physical market right now, and then you have everything going on with the ETFs and all the paper related type gold, that and silver, that it just becomes a matter of mathematics at that point. So, and if you think that she's far fetched in what she's saying with $7,000 to $9,000 an ounce gold,
Yeah.
we'll skip to this next article here, also from King World News, where they're saying if we see a repeat of 1940, gold will skyrocket to $72,250 an ounce. So we did I think it was a year plus, maybe even close to 2 years ago, we did a podcast about this,
Hmm.
that similar to this, where we saw price projections that were being made along these same lines, but in those instances, which is applicable here, it was due to, or would have been a result of, applying the government debt, if they were to monetize gold against the government debt, and that's
Hmm.
where you'd start to see these high numbers. But what's interesting is that again, you see $30,000, if the 1980, if we see a repeat of the 1980s, the price of gold would hit 30,000 an ounce, they're saying. A repeat of 1917 would put it at 60,000. A repeat of 1940 would put it at 72,000. So, and what they're referring to in short is basically inflation adjusted prices, and as
Hmm.
it pertains to, again, the debt market, et cetera. So what's interesting is this, is that as people are listening to this, or as some of us, we see these type of numbers, it may seem like inconceivable that this would be a possibility, but yet again, when you look at inflation adjusted numbers, this is what it did. It's already done
Yeah.
this. So it's not, in other words, like, take the 60,000 an ounce, if they compared it to a repeat of 1917, that is already adjusted for those inflation adjusted dollars, excuse me. And
Hmm.
so my point being is, people say, well, it's never done that before, but that's the whole key with these three dates they're giving us here. It has done that before, and that's
Yeah.
where I think it really should give people we're looking at these numbers with gold sitting a little less than 5 grand an ounce right now. Any of these would be great numbers, and if any one of these were wrong by half, you still stand to do fantastic in terms of the price performance.
Yeah. What I like about these two articles today is, our first one talks about what is going to happen if things just kind of remain the status quo. We're obviously going to continue to see inflation like we always do, and $7 to $9,000 gold in the next few years, completely expected to happen, right? But then the second one here is talking about major monetary resets. And again, when people say, oh well, 1917, that was so long ago, or 1940, or even 1980, right? Well, all of that is in about the last 100 years. And so in the last 100 years or so, we've seen three of these major resets, right?
Right. Right.
And 100 years, when you say it, it sounds like a lot of time. But when I realize that I'm already into my 50s, and I look at the last 50 years and how quickly they've gone by, you can see that we could definitely see one or even two more resets in our lifetimes. Let alone somebody who is watching this, who might be in their teens or early 20s, going through college. They've got a lot of opportunity to see these sorts of resets. And one of the differences now as well is that people hold a lot less hard assets today than they did back then, right?
That's
Back
right.
in the
Yeah.
early 1900s, I mean, you obviously had stock market activity and things like that, but people didn't trust that as much. And we have so many people today, and not to say that it's necessarily all a bad thing, but that just kind of blindly trust the stock market. They don't really know what they're putting their money into. They don't really understand how it all works, how secure or insecure it is. And so people have gone away from hard assets. Now that's starting to come back, right? We see a lot of business in our industry, a lot of consumers, learning, okay, I need to diversify. I should have more hard assets than just my home, for those that even own a home. And so they're diversifying into gold and silver, but it's still overall a small percentage of the population. So, when you take all those factors and you put it into play, I think there's a very good chance in your and my lifetime, we are going to see at least one more of these time periods where we have a big reset.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another thing that we should is important to note, or take a look at or mention here, is that, with these resets, we'll call them these 3 dates that they're looking at based on history, it happens very quickly. So
Yeah.
it's not something that, there is a 1 or 2 year ramp up where you're waiting to see this happen. When it happens, it tends to be a pretty abrupt process. And so again, these stars are all lined up to where if a person's sitting on the sideline and wondering what they should do with their money right now, if you're again from a stability standpoint, gold looks good, silver looks good, but from an investment standpoint, the market forecasts and predictions are fantastic. So, all right,
Yeah.
Chris. Well, thank you, and for those who tuned
Mhm.
in, thanks for doing so. If you are not subscribed to our podcast, please do that as well. If you'd like any information about gold, silver, or perhaps a copy of our report, The Secret War in Cash, you can get a copy of that for no charge. It's absolutely free for you or to you. And you can do that by calling or texting at 1-800-289-2646. You can also visit us online at www.swissamerica.com. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to talking to you more in the future. Have a great rest of your day.
Yep. Take care.